So one of the best investigative reporters in the country, if not the best, and the one is still doing her job. I mean, there used to be some other good ones, but now nobody's doing it anymore. Sharyl Attkisson, she is an investigative reporter. She is the host of Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson and the author of The Smear. Welcome to the program, Sharyl. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to be here.
So, Sharyl, I've been thinking about you ever since this thing with Joe Rogan started, because you literally wrote the book on how this happens. And I'm watching this unfold, and it's bringing back some very vivid memories. It's wave after wave after wave. It started with, he's giving misinformation. He's giving misinformation about COVID. And then it was, he's a racist. And now he's a transphobe. How does this end?
It's by the playbook. In my book, The Smear, where I dissected what was done to you, what was done to Don Imus. Actually, I would say the Joe Rogan plan looks almost exactly like what Media Matters and the left propagandists there and the interests behind them, what they did to Don Imus, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And it's when they find an enemy of whatever they're advocating or their money interests don't want discussed or exposed, they find other reasons to smear the person and try to remove them. And I talked about, well, what's the difference between a smear and just telling the truth? Because Joe Rogan acknowledges he said some objectionable things that are very hard to hear today. Well, I described that in the smear, and there is a line that explains this. These people, when this happens, are targeted not because of the information and views that they're being smeared for, but because of the other influence they have over issues that aren't even being talked about now, which is the COVID, putting out factual information that some didn't want heard. And I think Rogan was clearly targeted because he had large followings that showed ordinary people, not fringe or alone when they're thinking of certain thoughts and views or reading certain scientific studies.
So do you think it really is just that? Or is it they can't tolerate someone who won't bow to them? They got to take him out.
Well, yes, they do, but only because he's not on the right side of the money interests that people may not understand are behind these efforts that look like they're sort of grassroots efforts, but they're very well organized. You and I know Media Matters and other groups, once they targeted Rogan, started combing through every word he ever said over time and had probably already been gathering on him. They listened to everything you say, everything I say, everything we write, hoping to find that one little grain they could amplify into a smear for the power of destruction to get rid of voices that are off the narrative on these topics that their money interests care about.
So when they did this to me or my good friend Don Imus, God rest his soul, I forgot he's not in heaven. Anyway, when they did it to us, it was new to the American people. And they, you'd be like, no, these people are financing this. And a lot of people are like, yeah, right. And it was kind of a conspiracy theory. Now everyone knows. They've seen it over and over and over again, and they're sick of it. How does this how do you think this ends?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think Trump was the one who didn't crack when this stuff happened to him. Everybody else, there's some pressure to apologize, to crack. Once that little bit of weakness is there, as I wrote about, it's not as though the apology is there and then they go away, meaning the propagandists. That's when they really sink their teeth in because they sense weakness and opportunity. And their goal isn't really to get an apology. Their goal is to destroy the person who's harmful to their interests. Mm-hmm. So they keep going. How this ends, I'm not sure, because I think you raise a good point. Have they gone too far? People now recognize this. When they're going after, I use the example, when everybody's anti-vaccine, and people know they're not, but when they're all called that, when everybody's called racist and people know they're not, and when Joe Rogan, who's not a radical conservative or giving misinformation, and his listeners know that, when he's accused of that, it starts making people go, aha. So they think something's going on and it's less effective. Maybe they've overplayed their hand by broadening the net of the people that they attack. and getting more and more bold. But I think that's a sign on their part of the propagandists of desperation, because people like Joe Rogan are very effective in piercing the narratives, often the false narratives that they have, they make sure is all over the media.
I've been saying this for, last couple of months. I've had increased hope that things are going to turn because people seem to be waking up, and not just the ones that were maybe asleep or, weren't active on, the more conservative side of the spectrum. But Democrats, not leftists, but Democrats. Democrats are starting to say, I don't want any of this stuff. This is ridiculous. And I sense that there is a change in our society because everything's accelerating so rapidly that it's easy to see now.
And I think, yes, have they overplayed their hand several years ago? And I liken it to, everybody says the pendulum swings. Well, the organized efforts and the well-funded efforts, they've dominated since about the 2016 time period in a big way. But I don't think they're the majority. And the majority of people who feel differently, they're not organized and well-funded. So it takes a little longer. It kind of simmers. But I think it's simmered enough, and enough important things have happened, and enough people have been attacked that maybe you're correct, that it's starting to maybe swing the other way, or enough people want to do something about it that's reaching critical mass.
And what stops these people, Sharyl?
I always say the truth finds a way to be told. So ultimately the facts come out. You hear, I thought it was kind of funny, I heard today some of these states are lifting mask mandates, and people were speculating, well, maybe they're looking at science. And no, it's the fact that I think the vaccine mandate cultists have all gotten COVID now, so they're suddenly starting to say we should recognize natural immunity. I mean, ultimately, the truth is the truth, and it may take longer to get out in the sea of this disinformation, but I think ultimately it does. And you find that people can find facts and good information as much as others try to hide it from them. It may not be easy, but people naturally seek it. And so I think that's how it ends. The best advice I give, Glenn, that I think some people have actually taken, every time someone says, online or trying to there, that you shouldn't see, hear, or read something, that should make you go look at it, listen to it, or read it. And that's how you defeat the cancel and the propagandists. When you say, when you're censoring something, that means it's important. Doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but it might be true, and you should go investigate it. And that pretty much makes their strategy or tactic moot.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening too. Is they are so freaked out because they're becoming reckless and so overt. And this thing from CNN, just on the bandwagon, beating the drum and tooting the horn about how these people need to be canceled is crazy.
Well, as I wrote about, the most effective propaganda campaigns and smears are the ones that are invisible to the public, that you don't see the hand behind them. You're influenced in a subtle way. But you're right, this has gotten so obvious, I think, in the face of desperation on the part of the interests that really want to sway us, to look to a different place. I think it's gotten to be where people are looking at it, like you say, Democrats, Republicans, independents, whoever you are, and starting to go, what's harmful to the propagandists is they're starting to say, beyond COVID and beyond Joe Rogan, what else have they done this with that I just didn't think about?
Right.
And I think back to the vaccine autism issue. There's been scientific studies, lawsuits and settlements, admissions by the government and their own experts that vaccines can cause autism for years. But that's just considered, over and over again, debunked. Think of what they've done to these parents, some of the same public health agencies for decades, portraying them as crazy while behind the scenes settling and paying lawsuits and knowing that their own experts felt differently. So you start to apply, what else does this apply to what we're seeing today?
How damaged is I think the media is just imploding. And unfortunately, the government credibility has imploded. And now science and medicine is imploding. I mean, that's not a recipe for a healthy country in any way, shape, or form.
Well, it's not. And step one is to recognize that. But I don't know how you get back to a place where those influences aren't still at play. You know, they're there. They're accomplishing their goal. In some instances, if they simply confuse the situation, let's say there is medical information that a company doesn't want you to have about their medicine. Well, if they simply confuse it and you don't know what to believe, that's better than you believing the truth. And we're in this confused environment where everybody's putting out all the conflicting information. And so, yes, people know to be skeptical. They're starting to understand all of that. But that's not necessarily a healthy situation either. Mm-mm. And, you know, I'm going to be reporting stories that discuss in the near future. I mean, does CDC need to be, and I don't think it will be, but does it need to be blown up and restarted? Very few people have the kind of faith in CDC that they used to.
Right.
And, you know, to have the biggest pandemic challenge that they've supposedly gotten trillions of dollars to prepare for over the decades, and to so utterly fail and make so many bad decisions at every turn. I mean, what is that agency all about? And, you know, I still look at the fact that of all the things we know that have gone wrong, the same people are still in charge. They haven't even made it. I'm not saying punish and imprison these experts that were wrong. Someone else can decide all of that stuff. But these people are so wrong, and we're still listening to them. I mean, that's just stunning to me.
And it's like that in almost every department. I mean, I've said to President Trump in an interview recently, if you're going to run again, you're going to have to clean house. I mean, everywhere, top to bottom, and you're going to need the House and the Senate to go along with you. And I don't know if anybody is interested in actually cleaning out the swamp, but every single agency is kind of like the CDC, where, okay, some good people in there, but there's also some really bad people, some people that are misreading, and other people that have their own agenda.
Well, this veers into an expanded topic, but, you know, in 4 to 8 years, no one can clean all that out. This operates independently of the president, this mechanism you're talking about, I call it persistent bureaucracy. And they fight back with either just not implementing what the president wants if it's not what they want, or they launch lawsuits and subterfuge, and they can carry that on for a long time till the next person comes in. So I don't know how, even if you clean house, you get something done in a meaningful way. I think Trump came the closest to it.
Yeah, I do too.
Despite the fact that he was fought at every step, but he did do some things like reducing regulation. And after the lawsuits ended, finally starting to accomplish what he wanted with the wall. I mean, it's amazing he got anything done. Those are big changes in the bureaucracy like this. I would be very interested to see his approach if he were to get reelected.
Yeah. Sharyl, thank you so much. I know you're really busy, but thanks for coming by. I've been thinking about you recently, and you were one of the people that had been targeted, and then... You know, you have no place here on network television, so you went out and you did your own thing, and it's wildly successful. And now many of us feel like we're going to be chased off of our own platforms, which is bizarre, just bizarre. We got to turn this around soon.
Well, thanks for having me. Anytime for you.
You got it. Thanks. Sharyl Attkisson. She is the investigative reporter and the host of Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson. She's also the author of The Smear, which, if you want to understand what's happening, this really is the go-to book. This explains it in great detail. She took about a year and a half to research all of the facts on all of the big smears. And she explains, and you will understand, and you'll be able to watch the pattern. I mean, that's what, you know, she was saying, and I was too. It's just wave after wave. It comes, and they do the same thing over and over again. And when is America going to say, shut up? Just shut up. You don't like it, don't listen. And I'm not listening to you because this is all, what did Nancy Pelosi call it? AstroTurf. This is all AstroTurf.